Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Shout out to Avamats. Today is another one of that type of content where it's just sitting down and talking and taking a step back from the mindset of trying to create a finished piece of a finished product, a finished piece of content. A somewhat perfectionist mindset, maybe a very perfectionist mindset, that often leads to me never getting anything done. We're going to take a step back from that and we're going to try to actually get some stuff done, eh? Welcome to Let's Talk About It, the series in which I just talk about stuff. Or maybe this goes on a different playlist, who knows? Doesn't really matter. I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just gonna let go and just flow and just talk. Doesn't matter how long the content is, the thumbnails really don't matter, the titles don't really matter. No optimization, nothing like that. I'm just gonna sit down and talk. And today we're gonna be talking about AI. I am not against it really, but there are certain things opinions I have on it. And we're not gonna focus on those today because while I say the length of this video doesn't matter, ultimately, I do have something in mind that I want to talk about, and I'm going to stick to that and try not to ramble on and on. One of the things, and there'll be multiple of these videos because, again, we're not trying to create a finished product here, so there'll be more. But one of the things I look forward to with AI under these circumstances that the AI is running off of a computer in my house that is specifically connected to certain devices and does not have access to the internet unless I grant it that permission, or it does not have access to the internet at all, and I have to use a different device in order to give it the data or updates from the internet. I would also want it to be open source. All right, so we have my own AI, who knows, we'll give it a name or something, running locally at home, open source, perfectly pure, untouched. I would really love to have some kind of helmet, or not helmet, headset, or glasses, or something of the sort, some piece of technology that is comfortable that I can put on me that just allows me to write or speak into and take notes. And the reason is often my brain is never not thinking. The only times my brain really rests is when I sleep or when I'm doing certain hobbies like drawing art. Without structure, just free form art. Doesn't matter what it is really. That is really the only times I could think of in this moment in which my brain truly rests. Or when I am in the zone, wu wei, and all that. Doing something that I am focusing on that doesn't require a lot of thinking. Those are the only times in which my brain rests. It is very active pretty much most of the day. And it has been like this for a while, I would say. Probably in my later teenage years, as I think I zoned out a lot more during my earlier teenage years. And as a kid, I was just a kid, you know. So whenever I am putting away food in the fridge uh, for another day, when there is a food left behind, or I am washing the dishes, which takes me quite a while, I like to set it up and I like to take my time washing the dishes, which is a bit of a time sink, annoyingly. Part of me wishes to turn that into content. It is a uh, perhaps an unhealthy mindset of mine in which I am always looking to make something out of everything as I feel as if I am not putting forth the best of my abilities to provide. I have talked about this on before in places, but yes, it is somewhat an unhealthy mindset of mine where I want to turn even chores into content. But it takes me a little while to wash the wares. One, if it is greasy or anything, I don't like any sort of stain or mark to be left on the dishes, so I put extra effort into cleaning them. And it is in those times where I'm doing little chores that I sometimes listen to various YouTube videos or podcasts, and I am one who likes to leave comments. So it would be lovely if I had this sort of AI goggle in which it is trained on my voice to recognize my various slang and pattern of speech and sort so I can speak into it and essentially leave a digital note that will be transcribed that I can use later. That is one of the benefits, I think, potential benefits of future AI. I don't think AI is going to get to a state like that where it will be useful because I don't have confidence that it won't be, purely in the hands of big tech, but who knows? So yeah, that is one of the benefits of AI that I think I would love to have in my life. To have some sort of device on me in which I could take a note when my hands are occupied and I don't have to stop what I'm doing, dry my hands, grab my phone, take a note and all of that. Because I tend to have thoughts a lot. Thoughts that I wish to mark down before I forget because I have terrible memory for someone who is a young man. Uh, Thank you very much for listening to another one of my videos of just sitting down and talking. I will be making a podcast soon. I have changed up my mindset when it comes to things a lot, but I will be making a podcast soon. I don't know what it would be called. I might use the original name that I had written down before. If you are interested in the podcast, there are no promises or, you know, dates as to when it will come out or anything, but so far, this is how things are. I have note of certain rules and structures to my podcast so far, and uh, they will be updated when time goes on. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. But so far, I have written down here in my podcast. Anyone can join once these conditions have been met. You have given verbal confirmation that you are an adult. I considered perhaps having teenagers, adolescents of a certain age join the podcast, but I would not do that unless I have perfected uh, the system in which that would be done, in which I would probably want to disguise their voice. And I'm not sure if the commonly used method of distorting a voice is actually good enough. That is one of the things that I think about. Whereas, like, when it comes to like my relatives, for instance, is that one, that method does not sound good, and two, I don't know if that method is good enough to trick the human ear as well as AI. Could someone put that into an AI and figure out the person's voice? Who knows? I want to protect them because they are not an adult. I would probably also want them to get permission for their legal guardian. Um, but yeah, I've talked about this before with other types of content in which relatives want to join, and they are, of course, young, below the age of 18 and whatnot, and I don't want to put their voice out there. You know, I am very protective in that aspect, and I'm not sure if that method is adequate. I've also considered using AI to change their voice, either actively as it's being processed or in post processing. but I do not trust proprietary software with that, nor do I trust uh, online things as well. I feel like I would want it to be local and open source. I might even want it to not be connected to the internet, and definitely not off of a phone, as I believe that I have a bit of a theory that phones can store data and have other apps send them out, or send the data to other apps, because of the way certain apps on the phone from Google, Samsung, and various other people have seemingly arbitrary permissions that are just not needed, like the calculator having access to the internet when it doesn't have any feature that utilizes that access, and other things like that. Um, Option number two is you have a mic or a quiet space. So you have your own dedicated mic, or you have a quiet space like a library or an office where no one can interrupt you. I won't hear dogs barking, people in the background, music, etc. Because I want the audio on the podcast to be of a decent quality. Number three, uh, I can understand you, either your language or speech. I have spoken to someone before over Discord a few times. I believe I met them via Minecraft or something, and my relationship with this person is very question mark. They seem to care about at least playing video games with me. I do not know much about them or even remember much about them. But for the life of me, I cannot understand them. I don't know if it is the deeper tone of their voice, the nasaliness. I don't know what it is, if it is their mic, but I cannot understand them most of the time. I find it very difficult to hear and understand what they are saying. If you are going to join my podcast, I need to understand you. It is a discussion. So I need to understand you. I also need to understand your language. Unfortunately, despite being, descendant of for sure Yoruba, Mandingo, and Venezuelan, I do not speak anything other than English. Who knows if it is because they decided to blend into the culture. I know some of the family uh were like some of my family on the African side were slaves as well, so who knows if they were forced to just speak English. I don't know, but whatever it may be, no language was really passed down, except like a small amount of patois, I think my grandmother knows, which is, I think, Caribbean in general. However, the only one I really see, at least on my phone, is Jamaican patois. Uh, and I do not speak any of it. I could only like mimic it, like ipe, yepe, dapa. Don't know what any of it means. I wish I did, but unfortunately, I only speak English. So you have to be an English speaker to be on my podcast. Um, the next, for now, I do intend to learn languages, but who knows if I ever will. Uh, you have confirmed that you care about the topic and have a perspective to give or something to say about it. I will have a matrix group or something with a list of topics that people can essentially say, hey, I care about this, I don't care about this, I have something to say, and that is a requirement before you get into the podcast. You must have something to say about the topic and tell me whether or not you even care about it. Like, some people don't give a damn about the use of AI, they genuinely don't care, or certain things like that, and it's like, okay, I need to know that if you're going to join, whether you care about the topic in which we are going to speak about, so I can select the topics in which we are going to speak about that day, etc., etc., etc. Number 5, or if you do not care about the topic, but have a perspective to give as to why. So if you don't care about the topic, but you can give me reason as to why you don't care about the topic, that would be very lovely. I imagine you would be a secondary guest in that case. Like you would not be in the podcast unless someone else who cares is there, but you would be there as well so that you can speak as to your perspective of why you do not care about this particular topic, why it doesn't particularly matter to you. And I will make that clear to all guests, our perspectives going in. Uh, you don't have to be any kind of person to join the podcast. I will say that the podcast is not a debate. There is no winning, nor is there any kind of uh you have to be you don't even have to be like open-minded. You can come into the podcast with a opinion that will not change, and that is fine so long as there is order to the podcast and there isn't any kind of conflict that is just draining, stressful, unnecessary, etc., etc., etc. uh you are free to, as the audience, you are free to give criticism and anything like that. uh my personality type in a way kind of leads to me taking criticism very strongly, but I will not take an overblown negative response to it. Or make a deal out of it. But there have been times in which taking criticism or things said to me, I have took them strongly, even in personal relationships. Uh, but my response will always be either I don't know how to respond, I'm quiet, I go silent. I go silent as a response to many things, positive and negative and neutral. So it's hard to read me with that aspect. And or it might like take it strongly emotionally, but there won't be any sort of lashback to it. Um, what do you gain from joining a podcast? You simply gain the opportunity to speak with me and others potentially on my little space on the various platforms that I am on. Secondly, you uh, as well as sorry, I apologize. I wrote this in a different way of speaking than I am speaking now. Uh, you also gain the ability to shout out whatever you would like within certain terms of service at the end of the discussion, which will be edited into the midpoint. You may as well provide any links that I may put in places like the description or wherever in various areas on my podcast. My brother just threw a sheet on my bed for some reason. Okay. That is all for this video. I am unsure as to whether to split it into multiple parts. I think I will have a second part that is just this by itself, and also a part that is just this entire thing. Uh, Anything else I have to say? I will be doing manga reading streams. Note that I am not energetic when I read. I can be if others are around, but typically I am very silent when I read. So I imagine I'll have to set up some sort of background music. And while reading, I will also be analyzing it. If you have any suggestions as to ways to analyze a manga, please give me in the comments below or the reply section. The ways I am thinking of right now are basic English, like ELA or English language arts, um, which is like who, what, when, where, why, how, also from a very literal perspective, a spiritual perspective, a metaphor perspective, or a representation perspective. Those are my kind of ideas right now, is how to interpret uh something that is, a piece of art, a manga that I'm going to be reading. If you have any suggestions as to books to read also, as I want to start reading more, please tell me that as well. We have hit the 20-something minute mark, and my last video on my channel over here was, I believe, 47 minutes, yes. So I think this is about the right time to end this, where it's within the range so YouTube's algorithm doesn't really, mess things up, as I still want the channel to be discovered passively with time. Thank you very much for listening to me for 21 minutes or however long you have been listening.